My name is Lincoln Harrington, 68 years old, retired university mathematics professor with 40 years of teaching under my belt. After 3 long years without seeing my son Adam in person, I was beyond excited for our Christmas reunion. The invitation felt like a chance to mend our fractured relationship. Never did I imagine that evening would end with my own son pushing me to the ground at the dinner table, shouting those words that still echo in my mind. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt the sting of family rejection during what should be the happiest time of year. For most of my adult life, I was a mathematics professor at Northwestern University in Chicago. My wife Sarah and I had 1 child, our son Adam. When Sarah passed away from cancer when Adam was just 12 years old, it was just the 2 of us against the world. Those years were challenging, but they forged a bond between us that I thought would never break. I dedicated my life to giving Adam everything he needed. We lived modestly in a small 3-bedroom house near the university, but I made sure he had access to good education, extracurricular activities, and most importantly, my time and attention. Every evening after dinner, we would sit at the kitchen table working through his homework together. Math came naturally to him, just like it did for me. Adam was always bright, analytical, and driven. Throughout high school, he maintained perfect grades while participating in the chess club and math Olympiad. When he got accepted to Wharton School of Business on a partial scholarship, I couldn't have been prouder. I remember the day we packed up his belongings in my old station wagon and drove him to Pennsylvania. There were tears in both our eyes when we said goodbye, but they were tears mixed with excitement for his future. During college, Adam thrived in finance courses and secured an internship at a prestigious investment firm in New York. Our phone calls were filled with his enthusiastic descriptions of market trends and investment strategies. Though I didn't always understand the financial jargon, I loved hearing the passion in his voice. After graduation, he landed a job at that same firm and began climbing the corporate ladder quickly. It was during his 2nd year at the firm that Adam met Diana Patterson. She came from a wealthy family in Connecticut, her father William Patterson being the CEO of a large real estate development company. Adam mentioned her in our weekly calls with increasing frequency, his voice taking on a different tone when he spoke her name. The first time I met Diana was at a restaurant in Manhattan. She was undeniably beautiful, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes. She was polite but distant, asking very few questions about me or Adam's childhood. Instead, she spoke at length about her recent trips to Paris and Milan, the summer home her family was building in the Hamptons, and the charity galas her mother organized. Adam sat beside her, nodding enthusiastically at everything she said, occasionally glancing my way as if seeking approval. Their wedding 6 months later was an extravagant affair at the Patterson family estate. I felt out of place among the hundreds of guests in their expensive attire, many of them business associates of William Patterson. During the reception, I barely got to speak with Adam as he and Diana moved from table to table, networking with important guests. William Patterson kept Adam close throughout the evening, introducing him to various business connections, his hand firmly gripping my son's shoulder. After the wedding, I noticed subtle changes in Adam. Our weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When we did speak, he would talk about the dinner parties they attended, the club they had joined, the neighbors in their exclusive neighborhood. There was a new restlessness in his voice, a need to impress that hadn't been there before. I made efforts to maintain our relationship, visiting their new house in an upscale Connecticut neighborhood whenever invited. Each time, I brought thoughtful gifts for their home or for Diana, trying to build a connection with my new daughter-in-law. Diana was always cordial but kept emotional distance between us. She would accept my gifts with a practiced smile, but rarely used or displayed them. During those visits, I couldn't help but notice how Adam deferred to Diana on most decisions, from what they would serve for dinner to what color they should paint the living room. When William and Margaret Patterson would join us, the dynamic shifted even more. William would dominate conversations, often interrupting me or changing the subject when I spoke about Adam's childhood or his accomplishments before meeting Diana. Despite these warning signs, I tried to remain positive. Adam was building his own life, establishing himself in a new family. I told myself this distance was natural, that he needed space to grow into his role as a husband. I kept reaching out, sending cards on holidays, calling on birthdays, always letting him know that I was there whenever he needed me. When they announced Diana was pregnant, I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandfather and hoped this new addition would bring our families closer together. Little did I know that instead of bringing us together, the next few years would drive an even deeper wedge between us, eventually leading to that fateful Christmas dinner where everything would come to a head. After my grandson Thomas was born, I expected to be a regular presence in his life. I had imagined weekend visits, babysitting while the young parents enjoyed a night out, and holiday gatherings filled with laughter and new traditions. Reality proved quite different. My invitations to visit were frequently met with excuses. Adam was always too busy with work, or they had plans with the Patterson family. When I did visit, it was on their strict schedule, usually limited to a few hours in the afternoon. Diana would hover nearby, jumping in to take Thomas whenever he started warming up to me. Photos sent to me often featured Thomas with William Patterson, who Diana referred to as the doting grandfather. As Thomas reached his first birthday, the pattern of exclusion became impossible to ignore. I learned about his first steps through a group text message that included distant relatives and family friends. Holiday invitations came with conditions and time limitations. Adam rarely called without Diana being on speakerphone, controlling the flow of conversation. One day, I received a call from an old colleague who worked at a financial institution in New York. He mentioned running into Adam at lunch, saying my son looked stressed and had been discussing refinancing options. This was the first indication I had that Adam might be facing financial difficulties. I called Adam that evening, carefully bringing up the subject. His initial denial quickly turned to anger. "What do you mean someone told you about my finances? Who have you been talking to about me?" Adam demanded, his voice sharp with defensiveness. I explained it was a casual mention from a former colleague, expressed my concern, and offered my help. After all, I had saved diligently throughout my career and had a comfortable retirement fund that I was more than willing to share if he needed it. "Dad, I appreciate the concern, but everything is fine. We have some temporary cash flow issues because we are investing in some new opportunities," Adam said, his voice calmer but strained. When I pressed for details, suggesting perhaps I could review their financial situation and offer advice, the conversation took a turn. "I don't need financial advice from a retired math teacher, Dad. I have a Harvard MBA and work in investment banking. I think I understand money better than you," he snapped. That comment stung, but I pressed on gently. I reminded him that sometimes an outside perspective could be valuable, especially from someone who had no agenda other than helping. This seemed to touch a nerve. "No agenda? What exactly are you implying about Diana and her family? They have been nothing but supportive. William has introduced me to more valuable contacts in 2 years than you could in a lifetime." The conversation deteriorated from there. When I suggested that perhaps they could consider downsizing their lifestyle temporarily until they were more financially stable, Adam exploded. "Downsizing? Like living in a tiny house near a university campus, driving a 10-year-old car, and shopping at discount stores? That might have been enough for you, Dad. But Diana and I have standards. Thomas deserves better than what you gave me." His words felt like a physical blow. All these years I had believed Adam appreciated the stable, loving home I had provided. Now he was throwing it back in my face as if it had been some kind of deprivation. Before I could respond, I heard Diana in the background, asking who he was talking to. The phone was muffled briefly. Then Diana came on the line. "Lincoln, I think it's best if you don't interfere in our financial matters. We are doing quite well, and William's connections are opening doors for Adam that will secure our future. Your concern is noted but unnecessary. We need to go now. Thomas has a play date with the son of one of William's business partners." The call ended abruptly. I sat in my living room, holding the phone, feeling a distance far greater than the 300 miles between our homes. That conversation marked the beginning of a 3-year period. where our communication became increasingly scarce and superficial. When we did speak, it was mostly about safe topics: the weather, my garden, books I was reading in retirement. Never about their lives, their struggles, or my grandson. I would occasionally receive photos of Thomas, usually on holidays or his birthday, but they felt like obligatory updates rather than genuine sharing. I tried reaching out to Diana privately, sending her emails expressing my desire to be more involved in Thomas' life. Her responses were polite but dismissive, always citing their busy schedules and commitments to the Patterson family events. Through mutual friends and social media, I gathered fragments of their lives. They had joined an exclusive country club. They had renovated their house. They had taken lavish vacations to tropical destinations. All while, according to my financial colleague, Adam was taking out additional loans and extending his credit. Then, after 3 years of this strained, distant relationship, I received a surprise phone call from Adam in early December. "Dad, Diana and I would like to invite you to Christmas dinner this year," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar formality. "We thought it would be nice for Thomas to spend some time with you. He's 5 now, and asking questions about his other grandfather." I was momentarily speechless, caught between joy at the invitation and suspicion about the sudden change of heart. But the desire to see my son and grandson overwhelmed any hesitation. "I'd love to come, Adam. Thank you for the invitation," I responded, trying to keep the emotion from my voice. "Great. Diana says you can stay at the Marriott downtown. It's just 15 minutes from our house. We will expect you at 4 on Christmas Day." Before I could ask why I couldn't stay with them, considering they had 5 bedrooms, Adam added, "The Pattersons will be joining us as well. Diana wants everything to be perfect." As I hung up, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. After 3 years of exclusion, I was finally being invited back into their lives, but on very specific terms. Little did I know that this Christmas invitation wasn't the beginning of a reconciliation, but rather the setup for the most painful confrontation of my life. The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with both anticipation and anxiety. I wanted everything to be perfect for this reunion. I spent days shopping for presents, carefully selecting gifts that would show my love without appearing to compete with what I imagined would be the Pattersons' extravagant offerings. For Thomas, I found a beautiful handcrafted wooden train set from a local artisan. Each car could be filled with different items, teaching weight and balance while encouraging imaginative play. I also bought him several books we could read together, hoping to establish a ritual during my visit. For Diana, I selected a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm that matched her wedding jewelry, something tasteful but not overly expensive. I remembered how she once mentioned liking silver more than gold. For Adam, I had something special planned. Over the past year, I had been quietly speaking with a real estate agent about selling my house. The university neighborhood had become increasingly desirable, and property values had risen significantly. My modest home was now worth 3 times what I had paid for it 30 years ago. I had the preliminary paperwork drawn up, planning to tell Adam that the proceeds from the sale would be his. It could help ease whatever financial burden he was carrying without feeling like a handout. It would be presented as an early inheritance, a gift from father to son with no strings attached. Beyond the tangible gifts, I prepared emotionally. I practiced conversations in my head, imagining how to reconnect with Adam without bringing up painful subjects. I rehearsed meeting Thomas again, aware that at 5 years old, he likely had no real memory of me. I wrote down anecdotes about Adam as a child that Thomas might enjoy hearing, carefully selecting stories that showcased Adam's intelligence and kind heart without potentially embarrassing him. The drive to Connecticut on Christmas morning was a journey through memories. Each mile brought back images of Adam's childhood road trips we had taken together, the camping adventures in Vermont, the museums in Washington, D.C., the baseball games in Boston. I wondered if Adam ever shared these stories with Thomas, if any of our traditions had survived in his new family life. I checked into the Marriott at noon, carefully pressed my best suit, and arranged all the presents in festive bags with handwritten cards attached to each. By 3:30, I was driving through their upscale neighborhood, noting the elaborate holiday decorations adorning the large homes. Adam's house was impressive, a 4,000-square-foot colonial, with perfectly manicured landscaping, even in winter. A professional decorator had clearly been responsible for the exterior Christmas lights that outlined every architectural feature. Diana opened the door before I could ring the bell. She wore an elegant red dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, her hair and makeup flawless, as if she was preparing for a photo shoot rather than a family dinner. "Lincoln," she said with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're early." We said 4 o'clock. I checked my watch. It was 3:55. "I'm sorry. I thought a few minutes early would be all right," I said, adjusting the gift bags in my arms. I was excited to see everyone. She hesitated before stepping aside to let me in. The house was immaculate, decorated in silver and white Christmas decor that looked straight out of a luxury magazine. The air smelled of pine and cinnamon, but lacked the warmth of a lived-in home. "Adam is on a call with some work colleagues," she said, leading me to the living room. "Thomas is upstairs changing. The Pattersons will be here at 4:30. I set my gifts under their enormous Christmas tree, noting that there were already dozens of perfectly wrapped presents arranged there. Diana watched me place my modestly wrapped gifts among them, a slight frown crossing her face. "We like to open family gifts on Christmas morning," she said. "These are just the extras for during dinner." I was about to respond when I heard a small voice from the stairway. "Is that Grandpa Lincoln?" I turned to see Thomas peering through the banister. He was the spitting image of Adam at that age, tall for 5, with the same curious brown eyes and serious expression. "Yes, it's me," I said, my voice catching with emotion. "I can't believe how much you've grown." Thomas descended the stairs cautiously, glancing at his mother as if seeking permission to approach me. Diana nodded slightly, and he walked over, stopping a few feet away. "Mom says you're my dad's dad," he said matter-of-factly, "and that you teach math." "I taught math," I corrected gently. "I'm retired now, but I still love numbers." "Do you like math, Thomas?" He shrugged. "It's okay. Grandpa William says math is just for calculating how much money you have." I bit back a response to that particular piece of wisdom, instead kneeling down to be at his eye level. "Math is actually about patterns and puzzles. It's like having a secret language that helps you understand the world better." Thomas considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Can you show me?" Before I could answer, Adam entered the room. He looked tired, with new lines around his eyes and a tightness to his mouth that hadn't been there before. He wore an expensive suit that seemed slightly too large for his frame, suggesting he had lost weight. "Dad," he said, stepping forward to give me a stiff, brief hug. "Glad you made it safely." "Adam," I replied, holding onto his shoulders a moment longer than he seemed comfortable with. "You look well. The house is beautiful." He glanced around as if seeing it through my eyes. "Thanks. Diana handles all the decorating." He turned to Thomas. "Has your grandfather given you your present yet?" Thomas looked at the bags under the tree with interest, but Diana interjected. "We agreed to save those for after dinner, remember? The Pattersons will be here any minute, and I don't want wrapping paper everywhere when they arrive." Adam nodded quickly. "Right, of course. Thomas, why don't you go wash up before everyone arrives?" As Thomas reluctantly headed upstairs, I noticed the tension in the room. Adam kept checking his watch. Diana moved around, adjusting decorations that were already perfect. There was an underlying anxiety that seemed at odds with what should have been a joyful family gathering. The doorbell rang precisely at 4:30. Diana straightened her dress and plastered on a smile before opening the door to her family. William Patterson entered first, a tall, imposing man with silver hair and cold blue eyes that matched his daughter's. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. His wife Margaret followed, dressed nearly identically to Diana in a designer outfit, her face tight with what I suspected was not just holiday stress but regular cosmetic procedures. Behind them came Diana's brother James and his wife Stephanie, both looking equally polished and remote. Their 2 children, around Thomas' age, immediately ran inside without greeting anyone, heading straight for the playroom they clearly knew well. William barely acknowledged my presence with a curt nod, before handing Diana an expensive-looking bottle of wine. "Adam," William called out, "come help me bring in the gifts from the car. We might have gone a bit overboard for Thomas this year." Adam jumped to attention like an eager cadet, following his father-in-law outside. I stood awkwardly in the living room as Margaret gave me a cool once-over. "Lincoln, isn't it?" she said. "I believe we met at the wedding." "Yes," I replied. "It's nice to see you again." She made a non-committal sound and turned to Diana. "Darling, the house looks lovely, but I think those centerpieces we saw at Bergdorf's would have tied the dining room together better." Diana looked momentarily crestfallen. "I tried, Mom, but they were sold out when I went back." "You should have had your housekeeper go earlier," Margaret said dismissively. As they continued discussing decorations, I observed the dynamic with growing concern. Diana seemed to shrink in her mother's presence, while outside I could see William directing Adam on how to carry packages, speaking to my son as one might address an employee rather than family. When they returned, William's voice carried through the foyer. "Remember what we discussed, Adam. The Montgomery account is the key to your next promotion. I have a golf game with their CFO next week. Well, talk strategy before then." Adam nodded earnestly, arms full of elaborately wrapped gifts. "Yes, sir. I appreciate your help with this." "Sir." My son was calling his father-in-law sir in his own home. Something was very wrong here. Thomas came bounding down the stairs, his face lighting up at the sight of his other grandparents. He ran straight to William, who scooped him up with a booming laugh. "There's my boy," William proclaimed. "Have you been practicing your golf swing like I showed you?" "Yes, Grandpa William. Every day in the playroom. Mom says I'm getting really good." William set him down and ruffled his hair. "That's what I like to hear. Future businessmen need to know golf before they're 10. That's where all the real deals happen." I watched Adam observing this interaction, a complicated expression on his face, pride mixed with something that looked almost like envy. It struck me then that Adam wasn't just trying to impress his father-in-law, he was trying to become him. As we moved toward the dining room for appetizers, I caught Adam's eye and gave him an encouraging smile. He returned it briefly before William clasped his shoulder, steering him away to discuss something in hushed tones. The elaborate table was set for 9, with fine china and crystal glasses catching the light from an ornate chandelier. Diana's brother James immediately began pouring wine for everyone except me. When I reached for the bottle to serve myself, Diana quickly intervened. "Oh, Dad prefers the other vintage, Adam. Could you get Lincoln a glass of the Cabernet from the kitchen?" Adam looked momentarily confused but nodded and left for the kitchen. When he returned with my wine, I thanked him, noting it was clearly not the same quality as what the others were drinking. A small slight, but telling. As we took our seats for appetizers, the conversation revolved entirely around the Pattersons' social circle, people I didn't know, events I hadn't attended, inside jokes I couldn't participate in. Adam contributed occasionally, always with careful deference to William's opinions. Diana kept glancing nervously between her father and husband, jumping in to smooth over any slight disagreement. Thomas sat between his Patterson grandparents, largely ignored by everyone except when William would interject with comments about the boy's future in business, or Margaret's critiques of his table manners. I sat at the far end, feeling increasingly like an unwanted observer rather than a participant in this family gathering. When Diana announced it was time for the main course, everyone stood to move to the formal dining room. As we shuffled toward our next location, I could feel the tension building toward what would soon become the most humiliating moment of my relationship with my son. The formal dining room was a showcase of wealth and taste that seemed designed to impress rather than comfort. A massive table dominated the space, covered in an embroidered tablecloth with an elaborate centerpiece of white roses and silver ornaments. Crystal glasses sparkled under the light of a chandelier that must have cost more than a year's worth of my pension. 9 place settings of fine china and silver were arranged perfectly, each with a small place card in elegant calligraphy. I hesitated at the entrance, looking for my name. Diana was directing her family members to their seats, touching her mother's arm gently, guiding her brother to the appropriate chair. I noticed William was being seated at the head of the table, the position traditionally reserved for the host. Adam stood nearby, appearing anxious, his eyes darting between his father-in-law and me. Not seeing my place card immediately, I decided to be helpful. I picked up a serving dish of roasted potatoes that had been placed on a side table. "Can I help bring anything to the table?" I asked. Diana looked up, her expression tightening. "The caterers will handle that, Lincoln. Please just find your seat." I nodded and moved around the table, finally locating my place card at the far end, next to the children's seats. It was about as far from the main conversation as possible, while still being at the same table. I accepted this with a resigned sigh and began moving toward my assigned place. However, as I made my way around the table, I noticed an empty chair near Adam that didn't seem to have a place card. Thinking there might have been a mistake, and hoping to be closer to my son during this important meal, I pulled out this chair and sat down. The reaction was immediate and shocking. "Dad," Adam exclaimed, his face flushing with anger. "What are you doing? That seat isn't for you." I looked up, confused by his tone. "I'm sorry. I didn't see a card here. And I thought, this seat is for my father-in-law." "Get out," Adam interrupted, his voice rising sharply. He actually reached over and grabbed my arm, pulling me halfway out of the chair. I tried to stand on my own, embarrassed and disoriented. "Adam, I'm sorry. I just didn't realize." But Adam wasn't listening. With a final forceful shove, he pushed me away from the chair. I lost my balance, my hip catching the edge of the table as I stumbled backward. The momentum sent me sprawling to the floor, my hand knocking over a glass of red wine that splashed across the pristine white tablecloth. The room fell silent. I found myself on my back, looking up at the shocked faces of everyone gathered around the table. Thomas' small face appeared over the edge, his eyes wide with confusion and distress. Diana's brother James was poorly concealing a smirk. Margaret Patterson had her hand pressed to her mouth in what appeared to be horror, though whether at my fall or the stained tablecloth was unclear. Adam stood frozen, his hand still outstretched from the push, an expression of shock slowly replacing his anger as he seemed to realize what he had done. And then there was William Patterson. Unlike the others, he showed no surprise at all. Instead, there was something in his eyes that could only be described as satisfaction, perhaps even triumph. He made no move to help me, instead reaching for his wine glass and taking a measured sip. "Grandpa?" Thomas' voice broke the silence, trembling with emotion. "Why did Daddy push you?" Diana immediately moved to Thomas' side, pulling him away. "It's just a misunderstanding, sweetie. Grandpa Lincoln sat in the wrong chair. Grandpa William always sits next to Daddy at dinner." I carefully pushed myself up, feeling a sharp pain in my hip where it had struck the table. At 68, falls were no minor matter. I could already feel a bruise forming, but it was nothing compared to the pain of public humiliation at the hands of my own son. No one offered to help me up. Not Diana, not her family, and most painfully, not Adam. He stood rooted to the spot, his expression now unreadable. I straightened my clothes and found my voice, struggling to maintain my dignity. "I believe I'll excuse myself." "Dad," Adam finally spoke, his tone more defensive than apologetic. "You knew that was Dad's seat. We always arrange the seating the same way for family dinners." The use of Dad to refer to William cut through me like a knife. In that moment, I realized that in Adam's mind, I had been replaced. William was now Dad. I was just Lincoln, an inconvenient reminder of a past he wanted to forget. "I think it's best if I leave," I said quietly, looking directly at Adam. "I apologize for the disruption." "Lincoln," Diana interjected, her voice artificially bright. "Don't be dramatic. It's Christmas dinner. Just go to your assigned seat and the caterers will clean up the wine." I looked at her, then at William, who was now comfortably settling into the contested chair, straightening his napkin with meticulous care. His eyes met mine briefly, containing a clear message. "You don't belong here. Thank you for the invitation," I said formally, "but I think my presence is making everyone uncomfortable. I'll see myself out." I turned to Thomas, who was watching with tearful eyes. "Merry Christmas, Thomas. Your presents are under the tree." I hope you'll enjoy them. As I walked out of the dining room, I heard William speaking in low tones to Adam. Let him go. Some people can't accept when their time has passed. Now, about that Montgomery account. No one followed me to the door. I collected my coat from the hallway closet, my movements slow and deliberate despite the desire to flee this house as quickly as possible. As I opened the front door, I heard the dining room conversation resuming, glasses clinking, as if my departure was nothing more than a minor interruption to their perfect Christmas dinner. The cold December air hit my face as I stepped outside, bringing with it a strange clarity. The pain and humiliation began to crystallize into something else, a determination that hadn't been there before. My son had pushed me to the ground in front of his family, choosing William Patterson over me in the most public, brutal way possible. But what Adam didn't know was that his action had finally freed me from the illusion that patience alone would restore our relationship. Sometimes love meant accepting harsh truths, and sometimes it meant fighting for someone, even when they thought they no longer needed you. As I drove back to the hotel, nursing my bruised hip and wounded heart, I began to formulate a plan. If Adam had fallen under William's influence to the point of physically pushing his own father, then the situation was even worse than I had imagined. This wasn't just about our strained relationship. This was about my son being controlled and manipulated to his detriment. Adam might have pushed me down, but I wasn't going to stay down. Not when I now understood what I was truly up against. Not when my son's well-being and our family legacy were at stake. For most of my adult life, I was a mathematics professor at Northwestern University in Chicago. My wife Sarah and I had one child, our son, Adam. When Sarah passed away from cancer when Adam was just 12 years old, it was just the two of us against the world. Those years were challenging, but they forged a bond between us that I thought would never break. I needed to understand what had happened to him. Not just the gradual changes since marrying Diana, but the deeper transformation that would lead him to such a public rejection of his own father. There had to be more to this story than simply falling under William's influence. After changing into more comfortable clothes, I opened my laptop and began a systematic investigation. First, I called my old colleague at the financial institution, Frank Donovan. Despite it being Christmas evening, Frank answered, having just finished his own family dinner. Lincoln? Unusual to hear from you on a holiday. Everything okay? Frank asked. Not really, Frank. I need to ask you something about Adam, and I need complete honesty, I said, my voice steady despite my inner turmoil. Frank was silent for a moment. I'm not sure how much I can share due to confidentiality. This isn't idle curiosity, Frank. Something is very wrong with my son, and I think it's connected to his finances. I'm not asking for account details, just your professional assessment of his situation. After another pause, Frank sighed. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Adam is in serious trouble. Has leverage to the hilt. Multiple mortgages on the house. Personal loans. Credit card debt. It's a house of cards. My stomach tightened. Do you know why? Gambling? Investments gone wrong? From what I can gather, it's lifestyle debt. They're spending far beyond his income to maintain appearances. Private schools, country club memberships, luxury vacations. That house. His salary is substantial, but not enough for how they're living. I thought Diana came from money. Wouldn't her family help? Frank laughed humorlessly. The Pattersons are all about appearances too, Lincoln. William Patterson leveraged his company to the edge during the last market downturn. They look wealthy, but much of it is smoke and mirrors. He uses people like Adam, social climbers with good credentials, to prop up his image and do his dirty work. My mind flashed to William's smug expression as I fell to the floor. Has Adam approached you about additional loans recently? Yes. He was denied. His debt-to-income ratio is too high already. He mentioned something about a big opportunity that would solve everything, but wouldn't give details. To be honest, Lincoln, it sounded desperate. I thanked Frank and ended the call, my concern deepening. A desperate man making risky financial moves was a dangerous combination. I needed to know more about this big opportunity. Next, I called another former student who now worked at Adam's firm. Under the guise of wanting to surprise Adam with a visit to his office, I managed to learn that Adam had been spending unusual hours in the trading division, despite it not being his department, and that rumors were circulating about him taking on high-risk positions with client funds. By midnight, through various calls and online research, I had pieced together a disturbing picture. Adam, pressured to maintain the lifestyle expected by the Pattersons, had extended himself financially to the breaking point. William, rather than helping his son-in-law, was using Adam's desperation to control him, dangling connections and opportunities while giving nothing substantial in return. And now, most alarmingly, Adam appeared to be considering something that sounded dangerously close to financial fraud, a last-ditch effort to solve his problems. The situation was worse than I'd imagined, but it also clarified what I needed to do. This wasn't just about repairing my relationship with Adam. It was about saving him from himself and from William's toxic influence. I spent the next few hours developing a three-part plan. First, I would use my retirement savings to quietly pay off Adam's most pressing debts, removing the immediate financial pressure without him knowing the source. Second, I would contact Harold Winters, the dean of the business school at Northwestern and my friend of 30 years, who now sat on the board of a prestigious consulting firm. Harold owed me several favors, and I was ready to call them in to secure Adam a position away from the toxic environment of his current job. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I would compile evidence of William's manipulation and control, presenting Adam with the unvarnished truth about his father-in-law. By 4 a.m, I was making the necessary calls and transfers. My financial advisor was understandably shocked when I instructed him to liquidate most of my retirement portfolio, but he processed the transactions as directed. It was nearly my entire life savings, but I realized with perfect clarity that there was nothing more important to spend it on than this. Harold was equally surprised to receive my call so early on the day after Christmas, but he listened intently to my edited version of the situation. By the end of our conversation, he had agreed to arrange an interview for Adam at the consulting firm with his personal recommendation. Next, I drafted a detailed email to Adam. I started with a simple statement of love and forgiveness for what had happened at dinner. Then, methodically and without emotion, I laid out everything I'd discovered about his financial situation, including the transaction numbers for the debts I'd paid and bank confirmation that the payments had been processed. I attached documentation showing William's own financial difficulties, collected from public records and information from industry contacts. I explained the job opportunity with the consulting firm, including the salary and benefits package that Harold had outlined, which would allow Adam to support his family comfortably without the crushing pressure he was currently under. I emphasized that this position would be earned on his own merits, with Harold's recommendation based on Adam's qualifications, not on family connections or manipulation. Finally, I addressed the elephant in the room: William's control over Adam and Diana. I didn't attack or criticize, simply presented patterns of behavior I'd observed and their consequences. I ended with a simple statement. Son, a real father wants his child to stand tall on his own, not kneel before him in dependency. I have never wanted anything from you except your happiness and success on your own terms. I believe William wants something very different. The choice of which path to follow is yours, but now you can make it with open eyes. With love always, Dad. I scheduled the email to deliver at 7:30 the next morning, knowing Adam typically checked his phone first thing. Then I packed my bags, checked out of the hotel, and drove to the airport for an early flight home. As the plane took off, I watched the Connecticut landscape recede beneath me, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion, sadness, and hope. What I had done was either the most loving act of my life or the most foolish gamble. I had spent my life savings and called in every favor I had accumulated over decades. If Adam rejected my help, I would be left with very little for my remaining years. But if it worked, if it freed my son from William's grip and gave him back his autonomy, I would consider it the best investment I had ever made. As the plane climbed through the clouds, I closed my eyes, physically and emotionally drained. I had done everything in my power. The next move was Adam's. Adam woke the next morning with a dull headache, remnants of too much wine at dinner, and a night of restless sleep plagued by recurring images of his father sprawled on the dining room floor. He reached for his phone out of habit, squinting at the screen. 36 missed calls. He sat up abruptly, fully awake now. The calls were from various numbers he recognized: his bank, his investment broker, the HR department at his firm, and several clients, including the Montgomery account William had been pressuring him about. Before he could process this, he noticed an email from his father that had arrived at precisely 7:30. The subject line read simply, "What I couldn't say yesterday." Adam opened it with a mixture of dread and curiosity, expecting recriminations about the disastrous dinner. Instead, he found himself staring at a comprehensive analysis of his financial situation, including details he thought no one knew. As he read further, his heart began to race. His most pressing debts paid in full, a job offer with a prestigious consulting firm, documentation of William's financial manipulations. It was overwhelming, impossible to process all at once. "Adam, what's going on?" Diana mumbled from beside him, stirring from sleep. "Is that your phone buzzing?" He locked the screen quickly. "Just work stuff. Go back to sleep." She propped herself up on one elbow, suddenly more alert. "On the day after Christmas? Is something wrong?" Adam hesitated, his mind racing. Every instinct developed over years of marriage told him to deflect, to minimize, to hide anything that might upset Diana or, by extension, her family. But something had shifted inside him. The email from his father had cracked open a door he had been keeping firmly shut. "I need to check something," he said, getting out of bed and taking his phone to the bathroom. Once alone, he called his bank first. The representative confirmed what seemed impossible. His substantial home equity line of credit and personal loan had been paid in full. The investment broker reported the same concerning his margin loans. His credit card company was calling to verify the large payment that had cleared their system overnight. With each confirmation, Adam felt a strange mixture of relief and confusion. His father had liquidated his retirement savings to pull him back from the financial precipice he had been facing. The enormity of this act of love was almost incomprehensible. Next, he called Harold Winters at the number provided in his father's email. The distinguished business school dean confirmed everything Lincoln had written. A position was available, with a salary package that, while not as extravagant as what William had always dangled in front of him, was solid, respectable, and most importantly, real. When Adam hung up, he leaned against the bathroom wall, his legs weak. For years, he had been chasing William's approval, believing that the older man's promises of wealth and success were just around the corner. If only Adam worked harder, impressed the right people, and took the right risks. Meanwhile, his financial situation had grown increasingly precarious as he tried to maintain the lifestyle William insisted was necessary for someone in his position. And all this time, his father, the man he had pushed to the ground yesterday, had been watching, understanding, and preparing to catch him when he inevitably fell. "Adam," Diana called through the door. "Your phone keeps ringing. And why is the bank calling on a holiday?" He took a deep breath and opened the door. Diana stood there in her silk pajamas, his phone in her hand, her expression a mixture of irritation and worry. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Over the next hour, Adam explained everything: his mounting debts, the risky investments he had been considering, his father's intervention. Diana listened with growing horror, her perfect world crumbling with each revelation. "How could you keep this from me?" she demanded. "We could have lost everything." "Would it have mattered?" Adam asked, a new edge in his voice. "Would you have been willing to cut back, to live within our means? Or would you have just asked your father to fix it?" Her silence was answer enough. "Your father doesn't fix things, Diana," Adam continued, the words pouring out after being held back for so long. "He uses them. He used our financial struggles to control me, to make me dependent on his approval and connections." "That's not true," Diana protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Daddy has always wanted what's best for us." Adam handed her his phone, open to the documentation Lincoln had provided about William Patterson's company, its leveraged positions, its cash flow problems, the lawsuits from investors that had been quietly settled. has been using me to shore up his own position, Adam said. Those clients he introduced me to, I was supposed to bring them into risky investments that would primarily benefit his company. If they had gone wrong, I would have taken the fall, not him. Diana stared at the screen, her worldview visibly shifting. Her father had always been her hero, the standard against which she measured everyone, including her husband. The idea that he might be manipulating them both was almost impossible to process. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Diana went downstairs to answer it, returning moments later with her father. William Patterson strode into their bedroom as if he owned it, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "What the hell is going on, Adam?" he demanded. "I just got a call from Montgomery saying you've pulled out of our arrangement." Adam stood straighter, feeling a strange calm settle over him. "It's over, William. I'm not making those trades." William glanced at Diana, then back at Adam, his expression shifting to the persuasive, fatherly tone he used when he wanted something. "Son, you're not thinking clearly. That Montgomery deal is your ticket to the next level. We discussed this." For the first time, Adam heard the manipulation in William's words, the false familiarity of son, the vague promises. "I'm not your son," Adam said quietly, "and I'm done being your puppet." William's facade cracked, his face hardening. "You ungrateful little. After everything I've done for you, you were nothing when you married my daughter, a middle-class nobody with a decent education. I've given you access to my world, my connections, and in return, you've nearly bankrupted me trying to maintain the lifestyle you insisted we needed while using me to prop up your failing business ventures," Adam replied. The clarity was painful but liberating. "Diana," William turned to his daughter, "talk some sense into your husband." But Diana was still staring at the phone, at the evidence of her father's deceptions. She looked up, her expression conflicted. "Is it true, Daddy? Have you been using us?" For a moment, William seemed at a loss for words, unused to being questioned by his daughter. Then his expression hardened. "Don't be ridiculous. Everything I've done has been for this family's advancement. If Adam can't appreciate that, perhaps he isn't the right husband for you after all." The threat hung in the air. Adam waited, his heart pounding, for Diana's response. For years, she had deferred to her father in all things. If she sided with William now, Adam knew his marriage would likely be over. Diana looked between the two men, then at the phone in her hand, and finally at the framed photo on her bedside table. Her small family, Adam, herself, and Thomas, smiling on a beach last summer, a rare moment of genuine happiness. "I think you should go, Daddy," she said softly. William stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "We need some time," Diana continued, her voice strengthening. "As a family, just the three of us." William's face flushed with anger. "This is because of his father, isn't it? That pathetic old man has poisoned you both against me." "His father," Adam said, the words feeling right for the first time in years, "saved us from you, and from ourselves." William looked as if he might say more, but instead turned and stormed out. They heard the front door slam moments later. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Adam and Diana looked at each other, really seeing each other perhaps for the first time in years. "What do we do now?" Diana asked, her voice small and uncertain. Adam took a deep breath. "We start over. We live within our means. I take the consulting job my father arranged, and we build a life that belongs to us, not your father." Diana nodded slowly, processing this new reality. "And what about your father? After what you did yesterday?" Adam felt shame wash over him anew. He had tried calling Lincoln repeatedly since reading the email, but his calls went straight to voicemail. A check of flight trackers showed his father was already on a plane back to Chicago. "He'll make it right," Adam promised, though he wasn't sure how, however long it takes. Over the next month, Adam and Diana began the painful process of restructuring their lives. They put their oversized house on the market, withdrew Thomas from his expensive private school, and canceled their country club membership. Diana returned much of her designer wardrobe, finding a surprising relief in simplifying their life. Adam started at the consulting firm, finding the work more satisfying than he had expected. Without the constant pressure to impress William and his associates, he rediscovered his genuine talent for analysis and problem-solving. His new colleagues respected him for his abilities, not his connections. Throughout this transition, Adam continued trying to reach his father. He left messages, sent emails, even wrote a letter, pouring out his regret and gratitude. Lincoln responded with brief, supportive messages, but maintained his distance. He was giving Adam space to find his own way, to stand on his own feet without either William or Lincoln directing his path. It was a painful gift, but as the winter turned to spring, Adam began to understand it was exactly what he needed. 6 months after that disastrous Christmas dinner, I was tending to my small vegetable garden when a familiar car pulled into my driveway. I straightened up slowly, my old joints protesting after an hour of weeding, and watched as Adam stepped out. He looked different, somehow thinner, but more solid, if that makes any sense. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. His face had lost the perpetual anxiety that had marked it for years. He stood by his car for a moment, uncertain, then walked toward me with deliberate steps. "Dad," he said simply when he reached me. "Adam," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is a surprise." He looked around at the garden, the familiar house, then back to me. "Can we talk?" I nodded and led him inside. The house was much as it had always been. Modest, comfortable, lived in. I had decided against selling it after all, realizing that after a lifetime there, it was truly home. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had helped Adam with his homework all those years ago. He spoke first, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm sorry. Those words don't begin to cover what I did, but I need to start somewhere." I waited, giving him space to continue. "You were right about everything," he went on. "About William, about the financial mess I was in, about the person I was becoming." He looked directly at me, his eyes clear and honest in a way they hadn't been in years. "What you did for me that night, paying my debts, arranging the new job, it saved more than just my finances. It saved my family, my self-respect, maybe even my soul." I felt a tightness in my chest, a complicated mixture of pain and love. "You pushed me to the ground, Adam." He flinched, as if he had struck him. "I know. I replay that moment every day, wishing I could take it back. There is no excuse for what I did, but there were reasons," I said gently. "I would like to understand them." Adam took a deep breath. "It wasn't really about the chair, or William, not directly anyway. It was about who I thought I needed to be. William made me believe that success meant impressing people like him, that my worth was tied to the lifestyle I could provide, the connections I could make." He nodded toward the window, toward my simple neighborhood. "I was ashamed of where I came from, ashamed of you, not because there was anything wrong with you or this life, but because it wasn't enough for the person I was trying to become." He paused, his eyes filling with tears. "But in trying to become someone else, I lost myself. I became a person who would push his own father to the ground over a dining room chair. When I saw you falling, it was like watching myself fall, everything I was raised to be crumbling away." I reached across the table and took his hand, my own eyes damp. We sit in silence for a moment, letting the words settle between us. "Why did you do it?" Adam asked finally. "Why did you help me after what I did to you?" I considered the question carefully. "Because that's what real love looks like, son. Not controlling, not manipulating, not demanding perfection or compliance. Real love sees someone at their worst and still acts in their best interest." I squeezed his hand gently. "When your mother died and left me to raise you alone, I promised her I would love you without condition or reservation. That didn't stop when you grew up. It didn't stop when you married Diana. And it certainly didn't stop when you pushed me to the ground. Loving you isn't something I do when you deserve it. It's who I am." Adam wiped his eyes. "I don't know if I can ever make this right." "You're already making it right," I told him. "By finding your way back to yourself. By being here today. Tell me about your life now. How are Diana and Thomas?" Some of the tension left his shoulders, as he began to tell me about the changes they had made. They had sold the big house and moved to a smaller one in a middle-class neighborhood. Diana had struggled at first with the lifestyle adjustment, but had gradually discovered a new sense of freedom in living authentically rather than for appearances. She's actually started a small interior design business, Adam said with evident pride. Turns out she has a genuine talent for it, not just for spending money on expensive things. And she's building it herself, without her father's connections. And William? I asked carefully. Adam grimaced. We see him occasionally, for Thomas' sake. He's not happy about the changes we've made, but he's less influential now that we're not financially dependent on his approval. Diana has been setting stronger boundaries with her parents. It's a work in progress. And Thomas? Adam's face lit up. He's thriving. His new school is actually a better fit for him, more diverse, more focused on creativity and critical thinking. He told me recently that he likes math now. His teacher says he's showing real aptitude for it. I smiled at that. Like his father and grandfather, we talked for hours, rebuilding the connection that had been damaged but never truly broken. As afternoon turned to evening, Adam helped me prepare a simple dinner, moving around the kitchen with the easy familiarity of someone coming home. After we ate, he asked hesitantly, would it be okay if Diana and Thomas came to visit soon? Thomas has been asking about you, and Diana wants to apologize in person for her part in everything. I'd like that very much. As Adam prepared to leave, he paused at the door. The consulting job is going well. It's challenging work, but fulfilling. I should thank you for that too. I shook my head. Harold got you the interview, but you earned the position yourself. That's something William never gave you the chance to do. Stand on your own merits without feeling indebted or controlled. Adam nodded thoughtfully. I think that's the biggest difference now. I'm building a life that belongs to me, not performing a role in someone else's production. As I watched him drive away, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past 6 months had been difficult, living with the uncertainty of whether my gamble would pay off, whether Adam would find his way back to himself and to me. But in that moment, I knew that regardless of what challenges might still lie ahead, the core of our relationship had been restored. The following Christmas was celebrated in my modest home. Diana and Adam brought the food. Thomas helped me decorate the tree. There were fewer presents than what they were used to in their old life, but more genuine laughter and connection. When we sat down to dinner, Adam placed me at the head of the table, a symbolic gesture that brought tears to my eyes. Looking around at my small family, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From the humiliation of being pushed to the ground to the joy of true reconciliation, from the pain of rejection to the peace of authentic connection. I had learned that sometimes loving someone means letting them make mistakes, even painful ones. It means having the courage to act decisively when the moment demands it, even at great personal cost. And it means offering forgiveness, not because it's deserved, but because holding on to hurt only perpetuates the damage. Adam had learned about the true nature of success, not measured in wealth or status, but in integrity, independence, and meaningful relationships. Diana had discovered her own strength and talents beyond her identity as William's daughter, and Thomas was growing up with a healthier model of family dynamics than the one his parents had nearly been trapped in. As for William Patterson, his influence had diminished but not disappeared entirely. Some relationships can be transformed, while others can only be managed with careful boundaries. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference and having the courage to act accordingly. Has your family ever experienced a painful rift that seemed impossible to heal? How did you find your way back to each other? Share your story in the comments below. If this tale of family reconciliation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, understanding, and unconditional love. Thank you for joining me for this personal journey. And remember that in family relationships, sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is the space to make mistakes and the grace to begin again.